Good afternoon, everyone. Noctilucent clouds should not be in the northern hemisphere. Temperatures way too warm. They're trying to say it's rockets from StarLink, yet they forget the Hunga Tonga eruption boosting 10% plus moisture in our whole atmosphere. We're going to take a look at the debris and the chemicals from the New Palestine train derailment. You'll be surprised where they ended up. And as I've heard it put once before, there shall be signs in the skies. Noctilucent clouds are not behaving as expected. Northern summer begins. There should not be noctilucent clouds right now. These are wintertime phenomenon, extremely cold temperatures. So, as somebody said who was a long-time observer, it's the second best they'd ever seen, and this is in the wrong season. And what do I mean by that? Well, 50 hectopascals. We're way in the upper atmosphere, around 50,000 feet. And as you can see, the general profile, when it dips really far down in January, that's when we see these clouds. Right now, there should not be any. This is such the rare phenomenon. It has so many people asking questions where truly there are no answers right now, except they forget Hunga Tonga. And I know I did several videos on this, and I was talking Hunga Tonga back in 2022 for several months because it was such a all-encompassing event for our planet. That cloud height at the bottom there, 87 kilometers high into the atmosphere, which takes it far into the Mesosphere. One of the largest eruptions in the last 150 years, but because it was not in a very populated area and it was water vapor and the southern hemisphere, it was kind of brushed under the rug. So when I first saw this from the International Space Station, I knew this was a big one. This was the first day after the eruption. That much coverage, yeah, something significant occurred. They covered it for about 3 or 4 days and then, oh, don't do it. It's going to affect agriculture later on. And you'll see where the Mesosphere is. And we're looking 60 miles to 30 miles in height. Do a rough calculation, 0.6, we'll round it up to 90, so 6 times 9, 54 miles approximately, and that puts us at the upper edge of the mesosphere there. And if we read into the geophysical research letters back in July 2022, I highlighted it in blue, the hydration of the stratosphere. So this eruption put at least 10% more moisture in Earth's atmosphere in a single event. Many other papers subsequently following out pegged it at 14% maximum. So I'll say between 10 and 14% more moisture in the atmosphere in a single event. So here we come on to 2024, and we're having all these extremes occurring across the planet for rainfall. Snowfall across higher peaks in the summer right now. Across most North American continents, we got snowfalls at higher peaks. This analysis here is 3 to 7 years post-eruption, which puts us right in this area right this second. So if it was back in 2022 early, it brings us all the way up into the middle of 2024, which is 2.5 years later, and we get to the 3 to 7 year mark here. And this is December, January, February, top left, March, April, May, top right, June, July, August, bottom left, and September, October, November, bottom right. What's it showing you is the temperature differences that they're expecting because of the water vapor in these different months and different seasonalities. Gold investors need to buy the dips. Central banks are. Bloomberg and Citigroup are calling for 3,000 by 2025. TD Securities said silver eyes $50 an ounce. And in 2024, gold is up 18% and silver 35%. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get some great in-class service. Also, Patriot Gold Group has a no fee for life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. No fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call, 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. And you know, also temperature very much is related to water and rainfall, and also drought. So when you see these flipping in the different months here, you can see some areas mapped out where it might get wetter and you might have floods during certain seasons, like planting season or harvest season. There's been a lot of research done on this so far. And the reason I would do the refresher on this is because something's going on with the ozone layer. That's where those Noctilucent clouds are. So what's happening? Tonga eruption injected so much water into the Earth's atmosphere that it could weaken the ozone layer, and suddenly we have these strange phenomena occurring in the ozone layer at about the 3-year mark, right where they're pinging, where there's going to be an enormous amount of change on the planet due to the water column coming back out of the atmosphere and all these changes associated with our rainfall patterns. Atmospheric water vapor going to warm in the beginning, and then it's going to come out, and we're going to see some gargantuan changes. So how does this relate? Well, these Noctilucent clouds being seen right now, they're trying to blame SpaceX. 4 times the rate of launches during the previous solar maximum, with 4 times more water vapor being poured into the Mesosphere. Yet somehow they forget the Hunga Tonga eruption a couple years prior that pushed the most recorded ever in human history water into the Mesosphere. So this is your correlation right there. That something nasty this way comes that is out of control. And if you start to look at what the effects may be, follow me down the experiment here, the mind experiment. If this were to affect agriculture to the point that we could not grow food reliably for everybody on the planet, as a global top-down leadership, I guess, profile that exists on the planet right now, what would you do to control the citizens? Or how would you have all these other excuses out there why the food has stopped, why it's not as available? Because you're talking about this kind of gigantic water eruption in the Mesosphere affecting, and now we're seeing opposites everywhere you look across the planet. Things in the wrong season, literally the wrong season, everywhere across the planet. And that includes animal migrations in the wrong place in the planet at the wrong time in the wrong season too. So it's not just there's snow on the peaks. We got winter warnings last week out in the west here in the United States, snowing in Europe, snowing 9 feet down close to where the water would have come out of the ocean down there in Chile. In China getting inundated with floods, snows across the Himalaya right now. India pelted, Kashmir as well. Like everywhere you look, there's anomalies going on with floods, snowfalls, temperature, and things in the wrong place, wrong seasons. Yet not a peep about this Mesosphere water eruption from Tonga 2 years ago, 2.5 years. No, it's got to be a couple dinky little rockets going up. Are you telling me that these little tiny rockets have that much of an effect on our atmosphere, this gigantic planet, gigantic? And the further you go up there, the more it expands out in the atmosphere. So it's not like here on the Earth where we're bound by the crust. We're going up there where, if you look at the circumference of it, oh, it's far greater. And you're telling me a little dinky rocket can affect this? Come on. The excuse is not believable. It's truly not. So read between the lines. What's going on is why are we seeing so many distractions? And why are we seeing so much, I should say global event, or so many global events focused on food reduction? That should be the main point of conversation. The groundwork's being laid for food losses, crop losses, grain storage losses, higher food prices, food unavailability, and cut off the supply chains, all revolving around food. Perhaps it's this big old eruption nobody wants to talk about. And speaking of floods, luckily this is not occurring during a solar minimum, because this is the inverse. As we're in the solar minimum, there's more galactic cosmic rays, and more galactic cosmic rays create more clouds, which create more rainfall. It's just we are very lucky that this does not coincide with a solar minimum, that we're in a solar maximum where galactic cosmic rays are diminished to a point because of higher solar activity. Otherwise, we would have just uncontrollable floods that would have completely crippled our civilization by now. And also corporations and big supply chain, I guess is the best way to phrase this. All right, these train accidents, East Palestine. How does this slide into food production, which I've been talking about? Well, let's look at the contamination. We've got the chlorines, the vinyl chlorides. This is showing you where the concentrations are at that chemical level, the concentrations now. They've been measured and this is where it sits. It's settled in the soil, and they got these readings. So anywhere that's red, brick red, is a hot spot, obviously. Chlorines are a different color, but they're more on the dark greens. When they get there, that's hot spot. So chlorine, chlorides, vinyl chloride, that was the big chemical they were worried about. So you can see where the highest concentrations have laid themselves out. Maybe not so much at the accident site itself. But here's another one off the same report here off IOP Science. This is the drift. So if you follow all those purple lines back in, you'll see where we get into the red, the orange, the yellows. That is exactly where the train derailed. After the fire started, this is the profile of plume of where it moved. And when we get into the purples, you're down under 1%. Now, this was the most shocking one for me. This is the severity index profile. Anywhere it's into the red is much higher. Now you have to look at the numbers there, 6, 4s, 5s, 1s, but this is far above the baseline green. You're looking at no contamination really. Keep your eyes on the red and green. Again, what's interesting is the star, the yellow star in the middle, is where the derailment occurred. But after the wind drift and the atmospheric conditions, how is that way down in North Carolina? They're at a 5 of the index of intensity when places in Ohio are at 0. Again, map this out, overlay it on your population, overlay it on the food growing areas, and I think you'll get a good idea. So it's time for a moment of Zen, because we need to just really sit back and contemplate, what our next moves are. We're going to have to get more self-sufficient, and if you don't have electricity, thought I would throw this one out here. It's a good time to start getting your firewood stacked together for the year. I know many of you have generators and fuel, and that's great, but that'll run out after a period. You might have storable LNG or some sort of propane cylinders. That's great too, but that's going to run out after some time if it's a prolonged event. What won't is what we've been using for thousands of years, but you're going to need to store it and cure it correctly if you're going to use this for any sort of cooking or heating in a prolonged disruption. So take some advice from this slide here, how to stack, how to find your wind flow. Look for your south facing, especially with the wind flow and the air circulation between that. I do appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of the video. Churn a few of these ideas in your head and then see what you can do immediately this weekend as we get ready and move further into the change.